Hello, everyone, and happy Monday. Welcome back to the program. We're so glad to have you with us. I'm Eric Ham, reporting to you from our studios here in Washington, D.C. And today on First Post America, it's Election Eve in America, which is becoming now a proxy battle between two presidents. Also, Donald Trump jumpstarts the nuclear race, but who exactly wins is unclear. These and other stories on the way, but first, a look at the latest global headlines. Taiwan's defense ministry says the United States is working overtime to accelerate production of delayed F-16 fighter jets. Meanwhile, deliveries of advanced U.S.-made glide bombs remain held up by supply chain issues. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth visits South Korea for talks on reshaping the role of American troops in the peninsula and tours the demilitarized zone bordering North Korea. A powerful earthquake kills at least 20 people and injures more than 320 in northern Afghanistan just months after another deadly tremor left the country reeling. British transport police say a man has been charged with 10 counts of attempted murder following a mass stabbing on a London-bound train that injured 11 people. And the leader of Spain's Valencia region resigns a year after facing fierce criticism over his handling of last year's floods that killed more than 230 people and the country's worst natural disaster in decades. We begin with Donald Trump and Barack Obama, two presidents once again colliding on the campaign trail. Once they stood side by side, shaking hands in a rare moment of civility at the 2018 funeral of former President George H.W. Bush. 6 years later, the two are back in the spotlight, not in quiet reflection, but in open confrontation. And it all began last Saturday when President Barack Obama delivered fiery speeches in both Virginia and New Jersey, taking sharp aim at the Trump administration while rallying support for Democratic gubernatorial candidates Abigail Spanberger and Mickey Sherrill ahead of next week's elections. Speaking to a packed audience at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, Obama warned that the nation was in a pretty dark place.
Lord knows we need that light. We need that inspiration. Because let's face it, our country and our politics are in a pretty dark place right now. It's hard to know where to start. Because every day, this White House offers up a fresh batch of lawlessness and recklessness and mean-spiritedness and just plain craziness.
The Nobel Peace Prize winner also mocked Trump's focus on the White House's lavish renovations amid the government shutdown. Now, this government shutdown is in its 6th week and is now threatening to become the longest in American history.
As for the president, he has been focused on critical issues like paving over the Rose Garden so folks don't get mud on their shoes. And gold plating the Oval Office and building a $300 million ballroom. So Virginia, here's the good news. If you can't visit a doctor, don't worry. He will save you a dance.
Now, polls show Spanberger, a former CIA officer and 3-term congresswoman, leading her Republican rival, Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears, by a comfortable margin. Now, if elected, Spanberger would become Virginia's first female governor. Her opponent, a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, has campaigned on cultural issues, including restrictions on transgender athletes. Spanberger, on the other hand, used the rally to argue that Virginians need a governor who will speak up when reckless economic policies out of Washington hurt the economy, pointing to rising housing, health care, and energy costs. Obama praised her as one of the most bipartisan members of Congress, saying She had real practical plans to strengthen schools, grow the economy, and lower costs.
But Abigail has real practical plans to grow the economy and strengthen Virginia's schools and lower the cost of everything from housing to health care to energy.
The former president also traveled up the I-95 corridor to Newark, New Jersey to campaign for Democratic candidate Mickey Sherrill, a former Navy helicopter pilot and federal prosecutor. There he continued his sharp critique of President Trump's leadership, saying, "It's like every day is Halloween, except it's all tricks and no treats."
We've got a top White House aide who calls Democrats, the whole Democratic Party, domestic extremists. And then we've got some poor labor economist who got fired for accurately reporting bad job numbers that Trump didn't like. It's like every day is Halloween, except it's all tricks and no treats.
The New Jersey race between Sherrill and Republican Jack Ciattarelli is tighter than Virginia's, with polls showing a single-digit lead for the Democrat in a deep blue state. Now, amid enthusiastic endorsements, Obama also touched on allegations that President Trump and his family have profited from cryptocurrency ventures. He further criticized the president's use of artificial intelligence videos depicting himself as a crowned figure flying a fighter jet. And as the former president's words echo across both Virginia and New Jersey, voters now face a choice that could set the tone for the 2026 midterm elections and perhaps reveal whether Obama's voice still holds the power to shift America's political tides. And staying with election week in America, just hours to go before polls open in New York City, the mayoral race has turned into one of the most closely watched and unpredictable contests in recent memory. The latest round of polling shows Democratic candidate Zohran Mamdani still in the lead, but by a noticeably slimmer margin than the commanding advantage he held only a few weeks ago. Early voting closed on Sunday evening, and polls will open citywide at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, November 4th. So far, close to 500,000 people have already cast their ballots, surpassing the turnout at this stage in the previous mayoral election. According to the most recent Atlas Intel poll, Mamdani leads with 41% support, followed by independent challenger Andrew Cuomo at 34% and Republican Curtis Sliwa trailing at 24%. The 6.6% lead is Mamdani's narrowest since July, and other surveys paint an equally similar picture of tightening margins. A Fox News Beacon research poll released has Mamdani ahead, however, by 16 points. A Suffolk University survey taken between October 23rd and 26th recorded a sharp drop in his lead, down from 20 points in September to just 10 points now. Political observers suggest the shrinking gap reflects Cuomo's independent campaign gaining traction among moderates. In two televised debates last month, the exchange between Mamdani and Cuomo were both fiery and personal. Mamdani went after Cuomo's record on nursing homes during the COVID-19 pandemic, while Cuomo accused Mamdani of refusing to condemn Hamas. Meanwhile, Republican Curtis Sliwa focused on crime and public transport. And at the heart of this election are three issues: affordability, public safety, and the city's strained relationship with the White House. Mamdani has centered his campaign on taxing the rich, expanding social programs, and tackling rising costs. Cuomo, on the other hand, has emphasized restoring order, increasing police presence, and drawing on his experience as a former governor to bring stability back to City Hall. President Donald Trump has also entered the conversation, naturally, publicly threatening to withhold federal funding from New York if Mamdani wins.
We have a problem. We have a communist who's 33 years old, doesn't know a damn thing. Practically, he's never worked a day in his life. And he sort of caught on, right? And I'm not going to send a lot of money to New York. I don't have to. You know, the money comes all through the White House. And if they're going to be sending us stupid policies, communist policies, which is proven for thousands of years doesn't work. You know, we don't have to prove it again. We're not going to ruin one of our great cities, because we'll make that great. We will clean up the crime in about 30 days. Took 12 days to do Washington, D.C.
Mamdani's campaign, however, has gained more energy with major Democratic figures rallying behind him. He received a call on Saturday from his fellow Democrat Barack Obama, and the former president offered to be a sounding board if his advantage turns into victory, but didn't officially endorse him for mayor. The mayoral frontrunner released a new campaign video in Arabic to woo Middle Eastern immigrants to vote for him. If victorious, he would become New York City's first Muslim mayor. And with only 24 hours left in what's been a truly chaotic campaign, the race for New York City's mayor could very well go down to the wire, and who comes out on top is anyone's guess. And now from electoral politics to nukes, where President Donald Trump is defending his decision to resume nuclear testing, a move that's reignited global debate and the future of nuclear restraint. In an interview with CBS's 60 Minutes, President Trump said the United States cannot remain the only power exercising restraint while nations like Russia, China, and North Korea continue to advance their nuclear programs. He argued that Washington must act accordingly, even as he acknowledged that the U.S. already possesses enough nuclear arms to blow up the world 150 times.
Well, we have more nuclear weapons than any other country. And I think we should do something about denuclearization. And I did actually discuss that with both President Putin and President Xi. We have enough nuclear weapons to blow up the world 150 times. Russia has a lot of nuclear weapons, and China will have a lot. They have some.
The president's comments mark the strongest indication yet that the United States is in fact preparing to revisit a practice it halted more than three decades ago. Its last nuclear test was conducted in 1992. While President Trump did not clearly state whether this meant actual underground detonations, he did insist that both Russia and China have already been testing their weapons in secret, though he provided no evidence for the claim. While global monitoring systems that track nuclear activity haven't detected such tests, but President Trump suggested those systems could have missed them.
Russia's testing and China's testing, but they don't talk about it. You know, we're an open society. We're different. We talk about it. We have to talk about it because otherwise you people are going to report. They don't have reporters that are going to be writing about it. We do.
Trump's comments come just days after he called for easing trade tensions with China, but in the same interview, he also described Washington as a threat to Beijing, saying both countries constantly watch each other.
It's like everybody else. We're a threat to them too. Many of the things that you say, we do to them. Look, this is a very competitive world, especially when it comes to China and the US. And we're always watching them, and they're always watching us.
In fact, U.S. intelligence agencies have recently accused China of infiltrating parts of America's power grid and water systems. They've also accused Beijing of stealing intellectual property and the personal data of U.S. citizens, allegations Chinese authorities strongly deny. And when asked about China's nuclear building, the president said Beijing is making them rapidly, warning that China could soon catch up to the nuclear capabilities of both U.S. and Russia. Meanwhile, China has denied testing nuclear weapons. According to a Pentagon report released last year, China currently has more than 600 operational nuclear warheads and is expected to exceed 1,000 by the end of this decade. President Trump said he's spoken to both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping about the need for denuclearization, but acknowledged that every major power continues to expand its stockpile. Russia, for instance, has been testing new nuclear-capable systems, such as a new cruise missile and an underwater drone. Still, Moscow maintains that these are not direct nuclear tests.
President Trump mentioned in his statement that other countries are engaged in testing nuclear weapons. Until now, we didn't know that anyone was testing. And if he somehow means tests of the Burevestnik, this is not a nuclear test by any means.
North Korea and Pakistan, Trump added, have also been testing their devices. Now, what exactly President Trump's new order on nuclear testing means remains unclear. Analysts say that any move to do so could risk undoing decades of non-proliferation efforts as well as intensify competition among nuclear states. Yet Trump continues to insist that America must not be left behind in the nuclear race, a race with clearly no winners in the end. FBI Director Kash Patel is hitting back and hard, not in his own defense, but that of his girlfriend's. Patel is under fire after reports claim that he used a government jet to attend his girlfriend's concert performance in Pennsylvania. He called the allegations disgustingly baseless, and a senior FBI official has now been forced out, and tempers inside the Bureau are flaring. It's a controversy mixing power, politics with romance, and it's only getting louder. Here's our report with more.
An FBI director, a country singer, a private jet, and a very public defense. It's a story that has Washington buzzing. And now, Kash Patel has come out swinging, not for himself, but for the woman he loves. The FBI director is defending his girlfriend and his integrity after reports claim he used a $60 million government jet for a romantic getaway. It began with a defense that was personal and passionate. On X, Patel called the attacks against his girlfriend, country singer Alexis Wilkins, disgustingly baseless and beyond pathetic. He wrote, and I quote, "She's a true patriot and the woman I'm proud to call my partner in life." Wilkins, a rising country star, had performed at a wrestling event at Penn State University on October 25th. This was the same night Patel reportedly flew in on an FBI jet. The story quickly took off, with critics accusing him of misusing public resources to attend her show.
We're in a government shutdown, and this guy's jetting off to see his girlfriend. On our dime. Dear FBI employees, I'm sorry the government isn't funded, so you won't be getting a paycheck. Luckily, that doesn't stop real American freestyle wrestling.
That's how former FBI agent-turned-commentator Kyle Serafine framed it, sparking outrage across social media. Patel hit back hard. In a long 200-word post, he accused uninformed what he called internet anarchists of peddling lies. He said he won't be distracted by noise meant to tear him down. Patel even pointed jab at his own camp and warned supposed allies that their silence was louder than the hate. Patel ended his fiery post with a vow.
My love of family will always be my cornerstone, and you will never tear that down. I and this FBI will stay laser-focused on rebuilding this bureau from the ground up.
The FBI quickly stepped in to back him up, clarifying that the director must travel on Bureau's aircraft for security reasons, even for personal trips. The board quickly came to Patel's defense, stating that he reimburses the government beforehand. Officials said his travel followed policy and that his use of the jet is limited. But inside the Bureau, the turbulence was only getting worse. According to reports, Patel was furious that details of his flight leaked. Soon after, Stephen Palmer, a 27-year-old FBI veteran who oversaw the agency's aviation unit, was told to resign or be fired. He was the third head of the unit to leave since Patel took over in February. For Patel, the fight seems as much about love as it is about loyalty. Wilkins herself has filed a $5 million defamation suit against Serafine, calling the claims a smear campaign. So, was it love at 30,000 feet, or just another political storm flying out of control? Patel says the rumors are fiction and the mission continues. In a world where power, politics, and personal lives collide, Kash Patel stands defiant, defending his partner, his principles, and his position. The storm around him keeps gathering force. And for the FBI director, the flight through controversy is far from its final landing.
And finally, in Serbia, where anger still burns a year after a deadly tragedy that shook the nation. Tens of thousands gathered to mark the first anniversary of a railway station roof collapse that killed 16 people and ignited one of Serbia's biggest protest movements in decades. Now, what began as mourning has turned into a nationwide call for justice, with demonstrators accusing the government of corruption and negligence. As grief turns to defiance, tensions between protesters and authorities continue to rise. Our final report takes you to Serbia's streets.
One year after the deadly railway station roof collapse in Novi Sad, anger across Serbia shows no sign of fading. What began as grief has grown into one of the country's largest protest movements in decades. A wave of marches, vigils, and defiance demanding justice, accountability, and change.
A lot of sadness and anger has built up in people all these years, so it just culminated with this tragedy. This is a reason for some rebellion, but there's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of anger, injustice all these years.
On Saturday, tens of thousands of people poured into Serbia's second largest city to mark the first anniversary of the collapse that killed 16 people, including 4 children. At exactly 11:52 a.m., the moment the canopy came crashing down on November 1, 2024, the crowd stood in silence for 16 minutes, one for each life lost. The streets of Novi Sad were filled with people carrying red hearts bearing the victims' names. Many brought white flowers and candles. Under a clear blue sky, they laid wreaths outside the renovated station, now a haunting symbol of alleged corruption and negligence.
No one was held accountable for the roof collapse because there were no prosecutions, because Vučić should be the first to be interrogated. I'll say it again now, he and Dodik should be interrogated about that canopy, and everyone else.
Since the tragedy, protests have spread nationwide, led largely by students, professors, and opposition groups accusing President Alexander Vučić's government. Demonstrators blame shoddy construction and unqualified subcontractors for the fatal collapse. However, authorities deny any wrongdoing. But an independent commission of judges and experts recently told the European Parliament that the collapse resulted from high-level state corruption. The report alleged that funds were misused and safety standards were ignored. The EU has since called for a transparent investigation and even proposed sending a fact-finding mission to Serbia.
Our conclusion is that there is high-level corruption that reaches the very top of the state. Corruption that has led to the lowering of all standards of safe construction, safety, the selection of subcontractors who are not professional, who are not well-known, who are not reputable.
In September, prosecutors charged 13 people, including former Transport Minister Goran Vesic, with endangering public safety. In fact, earlier this year, in January, Miloš Vučević also resigned as Prime Minister. But the case remains stalled as a higher court has yet to confirm the indictment. No trial date has been set. While the government declared November 1 a national day of mourning, tensions remain high. Police formed tight cordons as clashes erupted between anti-government demonstrators and Vučić's supporters, who've occupied a tent camp outside Parliament since March. Bottles, flares and stun grenades were thrown as riot police tried to separate the two sides. Vučić, who has ruled for 13 years, insists the tragedy may have been an act of terrorism and accuses protesters of being foreign-funded agitators. But critics see that as an attempt to deflect blame. A growing number of Serbians now believe the incident has exposed the state's moral and political decay.
We have started, the fight is still ongoing, but something incredible happened, and that is that we're finally united. The students completely changed us, they changed our consciousness and gave us new hope, so for the first time I believe that something will actually happen, finally.
For many, those words captured the nation's mood. As lanterns floated over the river at sunset, 16 lights for 16 souls, the crowd stood silent once more. In the stillness, there was both grief and resolve. 1 year later, the victims are gone, but their memory is fueling a movement that Serbia's leaders can no longer ignore.
That does it for us today. We certainly thank all of you for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks everyone for watching.